The man who is always there to catch you, my director Hal Ashby, says it's safe to fly without a net. Are you aware that there was an actor whose breakthrough role garnered her an Academy Award nomination? She still hadn't made an appearance in Hollywood. 7 weeks later, a woman who was once touted as Hollywood's next big thing fell victim to a blacklist, remained silent, and lost her job for 12 years, at the peak of her career. Afterwards, her return was unexpected. After 12 years of being unable to speak her mind without facing consequences, she studied society's ills through her acting, directing, documentary work, Oscar victory, and rise to prominence as one of the most influential and vocal women in Hollywood history. She is known as Lee Grant. From the true reason she was erased to the years of silence and her astonishing return that shocked Hollywood, this video will show the whole incredible journey, what transpired, and why does hearing her tale still evoke negative emotions in us. Lee Grant came into this world on October 31st, Halloween, in the Big Apple, but nobody knows for sure when she was born. Depending on the source, the year could be anywhere from 1925 to 1926, 1927, or even 1931. For quite some time, Grant would not commit to an exact amount. A few years ago in Hollywood, sometimes if you want to work, you have to stay silent, even about things as seemingly harmless as your age. Lova Haskell Rosenthal was her given name at birth. She was the sole child in her Jewish family's migration from Israel. Her father's family was Jewish, and he was born in New York to Polish parents. Her mother fled anti-Jewish pogroms in the early 1900s after being born in Odessa, Russia, and eventually settled in the United States with her sister. The family resided in Hamilton Heights, a working-class neighborhood where numerous immigrant families were facing significant challenges in re-establishing their lives following the war. The arts played an integral role in Grant's life. Her immediate stage prowess was on full display when, at the tender age of 6, she began her ballet training at the Metropolitan Opera. Although many of her friends indulged in artistic pursuits for pleasure, Grant did not. It helped her distinguish herself in a cutthroat world. She received her training in New York at the Actors Studio, Juilliard, the Neighborhood Playhouse, and HB Studio, where she studied with Uta Hagen. Her teachers included Sanford Meisner. The Actors Studio, where countless Hollywood A-listers have honed their craft, was her next stop. These institutions fostered not only technical proficiency, but also self-control, perseverance, and a lifelong commitment to the art form. Lee Grant had a clear professional philosophy that she inherited from her family's experience with migration and war, as well as from her rigorous artistic training. That is, inclusivity and professionalism. In short, understanding yourself as an artist is a direct adrenaline sucker. He would never compromise, she would never follow fads, and she would always remain true to her principles. With these traits, she would be well equipped to take on the obstacles that lay ahead in the entertainment industry. In 1944, Lee Grant made her professional stage debut in the Broadway production of Oklahoma. Years of dedicated study had prepared her for a career in the performing arts. Due to the ongoing nature of World War II, it was particularly challenging for young women of foreign birth like Grant to break into the New York theater scene. Still, her abilities and commanding stage presence, the result of equal parts academic discipline and instinct, propelled her to fame in no time. The 1948 stage production of Joy to the World brought Grant renewed fame. Directors and critics lauded her performance, which opened doors for her in the film industry despite the film's lack of box office success, a path that would be irrevocably altered by a single employment. She made her stage debut in the 1949 production of Detective Story, playing the role of a young woman facing theft charges. Despite its diminutive size, the part was emotionally fraught. Even though most people would have shied away from it, she seized the opportunity to reveal the depth of her inner turmoil. Grant didn't merely rise to the challenge, she elevated the supporting character to the spotlight. Her breakthrough role came in the 1951 film adaptation of Detective Story, but she was cast again in the role after the director saw how well she had performed the part. Shortly after filming the film, Lee Grant established himself as one of the brightest newcomers in Hollywood. She received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress for her outstanding performance in her first film. Additionally, she took home the prize for Best Actress at the illustrious Cannes Film Festival. The American press gushed over her, hailing her as a fresh, multifaceted talent who shattered the mold of conventional Hollywood beauty. Plans for multiple projects began to take shape at the studio, all with Grant as their central figure. Many predicted that she would go on to become a major player in the acting world. Things changed, though, right when they were beginning. Her career was abruptly ended at its peak due to an unforeseen political shift. It was so devastating that it halted her in her tracks and prevented her from returning to the film industry for over a decade. That tipping point came not long after the press had located her. Her life would be irrevocably altered by it. Lee Grant commanded all eyes on him from 1951 to 1952. It was her first film role, and it garnered her Oscar and Cannes Best Actress nominations. Despite Hollywood's excitement over her arrival, her career was abruptly ended after only a few weeks due to a speech she delivered at a funeral. It was at Director Jay's funeral that Grant had spoken. Edward Bramberg, who passed away after months of police harassment over suspicions of communist affiliation, she claimed he was pursued and died of that, rather than illness. She was immediately added to the Red Channels, a list of Hollywood figures deemed un-American simply because of that one line. That was a surefire way to get fired from your job in television or film during the McCarthy era of the Cold War. Even though Grant wasn't a member of the Communist Party, her husband, screenwriter Arnold Manoff, was under investigation. The person in charge of HUAC threatened to end the process if she revealed the identity of her ex-husband. She declined. Sometime later, Grant stated, "I knew the price I would pay if I didn't do it." From 1951 to 1963, a total of 12 years, that price was off limits to professionals. No film or television project could feature Lee Grant, they said. It was as if she had never existed. Contracts were voided, other people played her parts, and her name was removed from casting lists. Without a trial, defense, or compensation, she was barred from the company. Directors shied away from her, and businesses remained silent. Off-Broadway productions, which Grant later transitioned to, were less regulated but ultimately unfashionable. In order to keep playing, she accepted small, low-paying parts. Concurrently, she was a single parent who had to raise her daughter independently, apart from any outside assistants, managers, or press. According to an article in SF Gate, this wasn't merely a workplace punishment. Rather, it was an extended, silent struggle with one's own mind. In her pursuit of knowledge about the world around her, Grant would frequent stores and peruse political literature. She was lonely and anxious, and this little action showed it. She described it as if she were constantly shrouded in an invisible cloud, invisible to those around her. However, she persisted. She continued to perform and record her lines for each character in a notebook, even when filming was paused. Even though no one was interested in seeing her, she did it to reassure herself that she was still an actress. She was a name that stuck. Asking, "Did you stop acting?" was a common question. However, this was never the case. She had no choice but to leave. It was characterized by Grant as a deliberate darkness. In her autobiography, I Said Yes to Everything, anger, pride, and her responsibility to her daughter were more important than hope in keeping her grounded. "Every door that slammed shut only made me more certain that I wouldn't let anyone else rewrite my fate," said the woman, as anti-communist sentiment waned in the early 1960s. opportunities began to present themselves once more. Hollywood typically turns its back on women after the age of 40, but Grant was allowed to return at that point. She was prepared to begin anew according to her own standards because she knew this wouldn't continue from where she left off. Lee Grant returned to Hollywood in the early 1960s when the industry started to relax its blacklist policies. She was nearly 40 years old and had a history of acting bans, so nobody was holding their breath for her. People in the industry were warned to avoid her because of everything that she represented. Then she accomplished the seemingly impossible. She returned even more formidable than before. With a role as Stella Chernak in Peyton Place, Grant made a triumphant return to television in 1966. She won her first Emmy for the role, and it also revealed a long-suppressed talent of hers. Her performance as a distraught wife, her eyes betraying both wrath and sorrow, earned her an Oscar the following year, 1967. Following that, Grant's appearances in film and television became more frequent. Her 1971 Emmy for Best Actress in a Drama, The Neon Ceiling, was her second. Columbo, Mission Impossible, Plaza Suite, and The Neon Ceiling were among her other roles. Lee Grant won 2 Emmys shortly after being placed on a blacklist, an accomplishment that is uncommon even for those who have been blacklisted. Her meteoric rise to Hollywood stardom began in the 1970s. She received 2 Best Supporting Actress Oscar nominations for her performances in 1970's The Landlord and 1976's Voyage of the Damned. Winning the Oscar for Shampoo, 1975, was the finest decision she ever made. To land that role, she had to engage in combat once more, this time with males rather than the government. During filming of Shampoo, Grant, her co-star Warren Beatty, and the film's director had a heated argument about the female character's emotional depth. It was impossible, she said, for a man to put into words or display emotion how he felt about women. Grant threatened to leave the film if Beatty didn't agree. At last, Beatty caved. "You do it your way. I'm a man." Even though it was a bold feminist statement in Hollywood where women were still expected to play it straight, she won the Oscar for that performance. Director Hal Ashby later remarked, "I can't imagine Shampoo without Lee." Grant was also a major force in the horror subgenre, particularly in hag horror, which centered on middle-aged women who were terrified, isolated, and insane. This was demonstrated in films such as Visiting Hours and Damien, Omen. Rather than yelling or fleeing, she employed her expression and body language to instill fear in those around her. Because she wasn't wild or obnoxious, but rather icy, laser-focused, and impossible to tear your eyes away from, she was dubbed a different kind of scream queen by some. In the end, Lee Grant transformed herself after years of being an underappreciated actor. She changed the way women were portrayed on screen. 2 Emmys, an Oscar nomination, and a string of critically acclaimed film and television roles awaited her by the late 1970s. The topic of her being a victim of the blacklist had faded. Now people were referring to her by a different name, Lee Grant, a legendary American film artist. Immediately following her first Oscar nomination, screenwriter Arnold Manoff proposed to Lee Grant, and the couple tied the knot. Manoff was well connected to the left-wing arts scene, charming and intelligent. Even before they tied the knot in 1951, Manoff's political beliefs had put him on numerous government watch lists. Grant had just entered her 20s when this happened. She remained politically neutral and unafraid. She entered into the marriage as a young woman devoted to her role model, hoping to learn and grow together while making sacrifices for her husband. However, serious issues with the relationship became apparent not long after. Poor Manoff lied a lot and acted badly. "I lived with a man who had nothing but contempt for me," he pointed out. He insisted that she read Marx and Engels, despite her best efforts to avoid doing so. "None of it made sense to me," she confessed. An old box of her letters to him was discovered by her at one point. His untimely demise in 1965 stunned her, "Please, I can't learn marks." "I'm sorry, but I can't," she said in response. In hindsight, she realized that his primary motivation for marrying her was to secure her assistance in raising his two children from a prior marriage. He placed her down and exerted control over her. Soon after the birth of their daughter Dina, Grant got a part in a play upstate. Her husband threatened to leave her if she accepted the position. Indeed, she wasted no time grabbing it. The end had come. Oh, how he despised me. He seemed interested in me at first, but we quickly drifted apart. After they broke up, Grant took it upon herself to raise their daughter Dina Manoff. I was a maid, you know. Dina was Grant's rock in his personal life for a long time. Honestly, that marriage was only good for her. She devoted herself fully to caring for, instructing, and spending time with her daughter throughout the years she was on the blacklist. Whenever Dina needed support as she pursued her dream of becoming an actress, Grant was there for her. Their bond as mother and daughter deepened as they worked together on each component. They weren't members of separate groups in 2013 when they played the gin game together. Rather, it was just two ladies who, in their own unique ways, had dealt with extremely comparable problems. Lee Grant was a famous documentary director for over 10 years before becoming a single mother. She once said in an interview, "I had no voice in my first marriage, but my daughter has one, and to me, that's a victory." Few people know this, but Grant did. She had to go through long stretches of solitude after losing her job in order to remain authentic. Nothing tragic happened, she was simply going through a period of self-discovery, and Dina was her rock. Lee Grant's connection with Joe Fury brought about a subtle but profound healing after the 10 years of pain caused by her first marriage. They have maintained their relationship for many years and are still going strong. Grant was enjoying a renaissance in her career when she met Joe in the 70s. He had been a stage dancer before transitioning to music production and writing. She was 12 years her junior. In her autobiography, I Said Yes to Everything, she described the experience as follows. "This kid was adorable, not smart or controlling, just love. It was the best food I'd ever had." She'd preferred not to get married again following her divorce, but they did it in order to adopt Belinda, a 2-year-old girl from Thailand. They moved into a large Manhattan apartment that served as both a home and an art studio after they were married. In contrast to her first husband, who was a Marxist who imposed numerous restrictions on Grant, Joe Fury repeatedly told her, "You can do it."